Every morning, the 7-year-old girl would tremble and beg not to go to school. The sudden change in her cheerful behavior was gone. When anyone noticed, the wounds and bruises, the school's assurances of safety, and the truth behind her injuries would shock everyone. Emma was always known for her bright smile and enthusiasm for school. Just a few months ago, the 7-year-old would pack her backpack every evening and talk excitedly about her day. Dinnertime conversations would be filled with stories about friends, art projects, and classroom activities. But then, something changed. The changes began. Eating less for breakfast, and the slightest complaints that she was sick were considered normal child behaviors by her parents. In a matter of weeks, the symptoms worsened dramatically. Every morning at the bus stop she would cry, her tiny body shaking as she begged not to go to school. Mark, Emma's stepfather of 4 years, had a hard time keeping Emma close to him, having come into her life when she was only 3 years old. The changes were even more noticeable. Emma, who had always been a big eater, now barely touched her dinner. She would push food around on her plate, her eyes downcast, and respond with one-word answers or silence. Her backpack, which was once neatly organized, was now shoved in so hastily as if she could barely keep her hands on it. Lisa, Emma's mother, called the school twice. Each time, Principal Wilson assured her that everything was fine. Emma was doing well, he said. Her teacher, Mrs. Harrison, reported no problems. Lisa explained Emma's behavior at home, but the principal said it might have more to do with family relationships than school. The situation reached a breaking point during bath time. As Mark helped Emma change into her pajamas, he noticed a small bruise on her upper arm. The bruise was not very large, but it was noticeable against her pale skin. Mark asked softly about the bruise. Her eyes were full of tears. When he tried to ask again what happened at school, she crawled under the covers and said nothing. This reaction made him wonder if what Emma was worried about was happening at school. The next morning, things got worse. At the bus stop, Emma clung to Mark's leg, crying so hard that she could hardly breathe. Mark had to carry Emma onto the bus immediately, because he felt so bad trying to pull her fingers out of her jacket. Mark tried everything. He waited for Emma until the bus arrived instead of taking her. He even offered to drive her to school instead, and offered to meet her teacher in person, although Emma was so shocked by the idea that she quickly changed her mind. This routine continued for 3 weeks. The old bruise had faded, but Mark noticed a small bruise on her shoulder again. Mark and Lisa discussed the situation after Emma fell asleep. The school's rejection had left them both disappointed. Something was clearly wrong. That night, Mark decided to tell her that he was taking the day off work the next day, and that it would be fun if he took the bus to school with her. Emma's eyes widened with hope. The next morning, Emma was still nervous. She held Mark's hand tightly as they waited for the bus. Her palm was soaked. When the bus arrived, she led him to a seat near the front, in the aisle, with Mark beside her. Mark observed everything carefully. The bus driver seemed friendly and greeted all the children. The other children were just ordinary elementary school children. The bus made several stops and picked up more children. Emma tensed up at every stop. She held Mark's hand tighter. At the last stop before school, there was a tall boy who looked bigger than the other children his age. As she got on the bus, Emma abruptly shrunk back into her seat, pressing herself down as if she was trying to disappear. Mark watched intently as the boy walked down the hallway with a satisfied expression on his face. As he passed through their row, he nonchalantly shook Emma's shoulder and whispered something that Mark could barely hear. Emma's eyes began to well up with tears. The incident told Mark everything he needed to know. The boy seemed to be Emma's bully, and from her reaction, this was not a one-off incident. When they arrived at school, Mark followed Emma to her classroom. Mrs. Harrison, a well-dressed and well-groomed woman in her 40s, looked up in surprise as he entered. Her welcoming smile wavered slightly when she saw Mark. Mark introduced himself politely but firmly, describing Emma's recent behavior, and he wanted to check out the environment in her classroom. Mrs. Harrison's demeanor had changed. She still had her professional smile, but she looked clearly uncomfortable. The worry in her eyes, and the way she stared at the door suggested that she had something to hide. His curiosity grew by the second. He recounted what he had seen on the bus ride and asked if she had noticed any problems between Emma and the other students. Mrs. Harrison answered nonchalantly. She explained that children often exaggerated their conflicts, and that Tyler, the boy Mark had seen, was a good student. Her words sounded as if she had defended the boy many times before. Mark noticed that she avoided eye contact when talking about Tyler. Tyler's forced smile and protectiveness made Mark feel strange. He mentioned the bruises on Emma's arm and shoulder, and watched carefully as Mrs. Harrison's face became almost unrecognizable. Their tense conversation was interrupted by the arrival of other students. One of them was Tyler, the boy on the bus. Mark observed as Tyler walked into the classroom with the confidence of a child who knew he was untouchable. What happened next made everything clear. Tyler greeted Mrs. Harrison with a simple, "Good morning, Mom," and placed his backpack on the desk in the front row. At that moment, Mark understood the connection. Tyler was Mrs. Harrison's son. She had deliberately ignored his bullying behavior. The principal's confidence immediately made sense as well. Mrs. Harrison would deny that there was any problem when questioned. Mark remained calm, even as his anger grew. He thanked Mrs. Harrison for her time and asked to go to the principal's office. Before leaving, he knelt down beside Emma and promised to return soon. In Principal Wilson's office, Mark told her everything. Emma's sudden change in behavior, the bruises, what he had seen on the bus, and most importantly, the obvious relationship between Mrs. Harrison and her son. He showed her the pictures of Emma's bruises that he had taken on the principal's phone. The principal was shocked. He confessed that he had trusted Mrs. Harrison's assessment without investigating further, a mistake he now regrets very much. Within an hour, the situation began to change. Tyler was transferred to another classroom and placed in the care of another teacher. Mrs. Harrison was called to a meeting with the principal and the district superintendent. At the end of the day, she was suspended pending a full investigation. Emma's transformation over the following week was dramatic. Her morning tears had stopped completely, her appetite returned, and she began talking about school again during dinner. Her usual cheerful eyes were resurfacing. The school made several changes. Tyler was permanently moved to a different classroom. Anti-bullying lessons were reinforced, with a special emphasis on inspiring children to speak up when they see or experience bullying. Most importantly, Emma learned that her voice mattered. The adults in her life would listen and act on her courage to speak up. And her stepfather, who had always been there for her, would support and protect her. This strengthened the bond between their families. Mark now knew without a doubt that Emma saw him as her father in every way that mattered. And despite Emma's difficult experiences, she was stronger knowing that she was surrounded by love and protection. What to do? If you suspect your child is being bullied, but the school denies, there is a problem.